Harry, good evening.
How are you?
Very well yourself.
I'm well, thank you.
On behalf of WMA Talks, it's my privilege and honor to be interviewing you.
Certainly an honor.
And just as a bit of background, for whom? And just as a bit of background, who is Harry Handelsman?
So that.
Harry was born in Germany, raised in France and Belgium, educated in Canada, and speaks 5 languages. Debrett's named Harry as one of the most influential entrepreneurs in London. And Lord Rogers has said frequently that he has the best eye for property that he's ever met. He has over 20 RIBA awards for his buildings. He's a visionary in the property industry who can take an area and raise the ante. And most importantly, he is a very regular attendee of Marble Arch Synagogue, and I sit next to him on Shabbos. So good evening.
Hi, good evening.
Harry, how has your background and your upbringing influenced your life and your work?
That's a very good question. I'm not sure if it has. You just go along. I don't think, I've always been curious, I guess. And to me, property isn't necessarily an opportunity, how much money you can make in a particular thing, but it is trying to create something that has an element of permanence. I'm not sure if it has anything to do with my background. I really don't. It's perhaps because I've been living in so many countries, and I sort of react to opportunities. Maybe that's really one of the things. I haven't been in a place where many people have been raised, stayed there, went to school, graduated, married, etc. I've been much more of a wandering Jew than that. So I guess it maybe is it synonymous to perhaps be prepared to take certain risks? Or is it synonymous with someone looking at things differently than others? I don't know. I've never really thought about it.
Well, certainly all your contemporaries in the property world say that you take on projects that other people will be daunted by, and that you take these risks on with relish. And what I'd like to understand is, how has Harry Handelsman been able to create the trendiest, most sought after restaurant and hotel in London?
I mean, it's not really that. I mean, I take, I believe in certain things, and and when I look at the development and I really believe in it, just because other people would shy away from it, that doesn't necessarily make it right or wrong. If you believe in something and you feel there's a need for it, I think at least I convince myself, and then I convince the rest of my team around me, and hopefully by us having that kind of conviction and that kind of determination to quality, to the developments that we undertake, we are able to inspire others to hope to come, live, enjoy the same spaces.
But I had the privilege of being shown St Pancras when it was in its beginning, before it was really developed, and also the Stratford development that you've made. And these were quite incredible developments that are landmarks today in London, and really set a new level for what people would expect. So the risk taking on there must have been enormous. Was it daunting?
Of course, it's daunting, it always is, but I think really what I want to do is, there are many people that are much larger, much more successful, developed than I. What I try to do is I try to find a niche. I try to sort of go to places where others haven't gone, and because I've been relatively successful, in my career, I went to Clerkenwell when Clerkenwell was a place that people drove through when they used to go, as I did, from the West End to the city. The office were in the West End, the cities were where the banks were. At least that was my case, and I drove through to it. But when I found the buildings, I actually got to understand there was actually community that was in existence. It just wasn't on the map. So I have a tendency to go to areas that are absolutely logical, because if I tell someone today, you know, oh, I did a development in Clerkenwell, people would say, what are you talking about? So, but I sure in 1992, there was a very, very different kind of environment. And I've done this quite often, not because I choose to necessarily, because those are the opportunities that I find exciting. I find buildings, I find opportunities, and then I do them. When you saw St Pancras, and St Pancras for me was a building that I had a great deal of admiration for. I mean, it's one of the most stunning properties that I have ever come across in my life, and many of the experts considered among the 10 best buildings in the United Kingdom in terms of prestigious and quality, and that's a fact. And once one understands not only the exterior but the interior, the niches, the detail of everything, it is pretty phenomenal. But then there was this building that was totally, it was dilapidated, unloved. There was a moment they wanted to demolish it. And I was given an opportunity. And once I take an opportunity, albeit challenging from a perspective of size and complexity, we, you know, together with my team, we really put in a lot of effort. And yes, time has helped, because when I looked at St Pancras, King's Cross was a place you wanted to avoid as much as possible, at least most people did. And today, it's a place that is very much sought after. When it came to and you made a reference to Stratford. Stratford to me was a situation whereby I wanted to create a building that isn't just about a residential and a hotel. I didn't want to just create residences where people come, rent or buy. I want to create something that is as kin to a community as I possibly can find. And that is what I wanted to establish there, because I believe this kind of interaction in high-rise is a possibility. Corbusier thought about it so many years ago, but I think one can do it. And you have that phenomenon to a certain degree at the Barbican. But the Barbican wasn't a private enterprise, it was a public development. So I think there's a need, and indeed over the last year since we've completed it, this community has come together, and and people are excited. And then the one hotel which you didn't mention, which is the Firehouse. So what made me to develop the Firehouse? What made me develop the Firehouse? Because I never understood, when I was speaking to friends, everybody, Marylebone is amazing, Marylebone High Street, fantastic, etc. But yet, everything that was cool, interesting, destination happened to be south of Oxford Street. And to me, just didn't make any sense. Why does everything have to be in Mayfair, Soho, St. James, etc.? So, or Knightsbridge. So I decided, why not create something? But I think in order to create something that you aspire to create, you need to find the right opportunity. And when that fire station, which was derelict, came to the market, not derelict, it was owned by the Portman, came to the market. Initially, they had a conversation with Malmaison to convert it into a Malmaison hotel. And that makes sense, because a Malmaison was typical for Marylebone, that's what you have over there, etc. And I said, look, guys, you're making a huge mistake. And I think I'm pleased they listened to us, but I think the Portman is far more happier, because I think we added many, many, many hundreds of millions to their portfolio by virtue of making Marylebone a destination.
I mean, your attention to detail is legendary. Was that ingrained in you? Does that come from your youth? Does that come from your yeshiva days? Because, I mean, speaking to various people in your hotels, I think that you are very challenging when it comes to attention to detail and how they perform their duties.
I think the attention to detail is only really relevant next to whom I sit on Shabbos when he decides not to be in the Far East or in Italy. That's where I have an attention to detail. No, but I think my attention to detail, I'm passionate about what I do. And I think I take also a certain amount of pride of what I do. And just like people, when they care about what they do, it is about the detail. You can have an impression of something, and you have it and it can last a moment, can last a day, etc. But when you look at details, and the details are really refined, and you kind of think, I didn't think about that. That makes sense. I think it makes the development far more relevant.
But I mean, I've seen firsthand in both your developments your attention to detail, which is incredible. I've also had firsthand your attention to detail, because you're the only person who noticed that my feet went together and facing forward when I was taking the service and saying the Amida. And there was nothing stopping you coming up to me and saying, feet together, please.
You know,
So,
Dennis, I've known you for many years, and despite your wisdom, you always want to learn more. And I figured, if I wouldn't be telling you, I wouldn't be doing you a favor. And I think the fact that other people didn't tell you, I don't know if it's a lack of attention to detail, maybe lack of care. And since I care for my friends, I try to advise them.
Thank you. You also have a love of art.
Yes.
And so tell us about the love of art, where it came from, what kind of art you enjoy.
I mean, I think my love of art is, it's probably, having some exposure to it. I have a sister who in the 70s, late 70s, spent a lot of time in New York. She knew the people like Andy Warhol, Basquiat, etc. So many quite well-known artists. And I used to see her and I used to hang out with them. So it just became sort of a natural thing. It wasn't necessarily collecting because of the value, because the upside and all the rest of it at the time, it was far more genuine. And in fact, in the early 90s, when I was here in London, one of the places I used to hang out was the Groucho. And the Groucho, you couldn't help but meeting what it was called the YB, what is still called the young British, they're no longer so young, the young British artists, and they all hung out there. And by virtue of them becoming a friend, you start appreciating the talent, seeing what they do, and it's just a natural exposure. I also like museums. And I think the virtue of museums, and by virtue of wanting to go to a museum, it just gives you something. There's many more things that I would like to collect, but I probably don't have the ability to. Simply, I don't have the money.
And have you still got your tiger in the entrance in your house, in your flat?
Quite the entrance, but it's still there, yes.
You're a religious Jew, you're an Orthodox Jew, you come from an Orthodox background, you're a Ger Jew. What does that mean to you? And what does Marble Arch and Western Marble Arch mean to you? And what does it, how does it influence you the way you lead your life?
I think it gives you a sense of obligation. I think on certain, there are certain ethics that apply to religion, that if you think about it, and if you consider yourself you need to there's an awareness which I think probably my upbringing has given me. I'm not necessarily sure that you have to be an Orthodox Jew in order to have that, but perhaps some of it. I also study it, and I'm just amazed, things that are written thousands of years ago, A, are some of them relevant, B, how exciting they are, and I just find the whole essence of it. Not that you refer to Orthodox Jews, I'm sure many people would not consider me Orthodox. I'm probably an Orthodox Jew among Marble Arch. If I were to go to a shtiebel in Jerusalem or anything like that, I'm not sure if most people would describe me as such, but it doesn't matter. I just believe in the ethics, and I think that it has given me some strong fundamentals, and I had the privilege of having that exposure.
And in terms of your legacy, what do you want your legacy to be?
What do I want my legacy to be is, well, what I would really want to do is, when they will build my monument, I don't want it to be damaged.
You want it to be perfect. But, as I said, you are a visionary in the property world. You're able, in the same ways you've taken the Chiltern Firehouse and you've raised the ante in the whole area. How does it feel when you know that you've gone into an area and you personally, by the work you've done and the buildings you've created, has changed the value of the properties, has changed the perception of that whole area? What kind of feeling does that give you?
Well, sadly, it's not very commercial. I mean, I knew exactly what I was doing when I went into the firehouse in terms of the value. So if I would want to be extremely pragmatic in terms of making money, the first thing that I should have done is bought as many apartments on Chiltern Street, around £600 a square foot, that's what they were, and just buy them. You know, because there was very little downside, and I knew how I was going to raise the ante. But that's not my ambition necessarily, buying a number of apartments and making money. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it's not really what my ambition is. My ambition is really, I love this city. I love the diversity of London. I love its cultural heritage. I love its tolerance. I love everything else. And I think in some shape or form, being able to be a small contributor to making the city what it is give you some pride.
Well, you've certainly done that. I mean, St Pancras is a landmark. I mean, everybody has got to be so incredibly proud of what you've achieved when you take the Eurostar and you come into St Pancras. You know, it is, you know, the greatest station and the greatest building and railway hotel that I've ever been to. So, and it certainly makes life very easy for everybody. And what you've created at the Stratford, you know, is remarkable, because it is, as you say, it's not just a building, it's a lifestyle there.
Yeah, indeed. And, you know, and what I always love is once upon a time, my arrogant Parisian friends, they always used to say how wonderful Paris was, and what a non-entity London is. And I remember when St Pancras first opened the station, even before the hotel was finished, I used to jest them, so where would you prefer arriving, at Gare du Nord or St Pancras? And that quickly shut them up. So that's sort of satisfying.
How has the lockdown and how has the COVID-19 affected you personally and in business?
Personally, I've got weird dreams. I've never had so many strange dreams since the lockdown that I ever had before. That's just one of the effects.
And they were strange before.
They were probably, but now they're totally bizarre, and that's kind of interesting. Having said, but you know, Keith Breslauer told me he has similar situations, so I guess I'm not unique in when I started speaking to people, actually people have it as well. What effect, it gives you time to reflect. I mean, and when the lockdown came, one of the things I was just wondering, what am I going to do? You know, I'm not going to go to the office or as regulated that I used to go to. So what am I going to do? So I'm thinking maybe learn a language. You know, that could be interesting, because I wouldn't mind learning Spanish or Italian, etc. And speaking French, it shouldn't be too difficult. But then I also thought there's something called daf yomi. You know, it's a daf in the Talmud that you study every day, and it takes about 7 years, etc. to study. And I remember Rabbi Samtela was telling me that he went to New York and he saw the Siyum and everything else. And then years ago, I went to Estonia with a friend of mine who was studying daf yomi, you know, and fine, great. So I called him up and told him, I know you've been studying this, you know, before. Tell me, who do you go to? Where do you go to? So he suggested that I should look at a website, which is called All Daf. And I found somebody. So they have about 7 or 8 different rabbis teaching. And after 3 or 4, I found one who's amazing. So now I spend about 3 or 4 hours because I have to catch up. I caught up about 80 pages, but I still have about 20 left to catch up, because every day you learn one daf. So I have to catch up. So I have another 20 or so to catch up. So I spend about 3-4 hours a day studying. And frankly speaking, I find it phenomenal. I find it interesting. I find it regenerating, etc. So I feel, from that perspective, from a personal perspective, I think it's great. From a business perspective, it's immensely challenging. Being in the hospitality, it's very, very challenging. I mean, just earlier, I had a phone call. I have a tenant that took one of a building of mine, you know, and, you know, rents are due. And his proposal is to offer me 25% of the rent, you know, until such time as he makes money. And I simply said, this is just not acceptable. So, you know, so it's a bit of negotiations going on. But in terms of the the hospitality industry, it is a real challenge. And the other challenge is what happens if it comes back? And then I think it's going to be devastating. But hopefully it won't. Hopefully we'll find a vaccine and everything else. So 4th of July, the government announced yesterday that they are easing the measures. So we're going to be opening some of our hotels, some of our restaurants, and it will be curious to see how people will react. Hopefully positively, because people don't want to stay at home anymore, and hopefully safely, because we don't want this pandemic to reemerge as bad as it was a few weeks ago.
So as you mentioned, I mean, you know, you've had a very varied youth and background, different countries. You went to yeshiva as a young boy. Has being a yeshiva bochnek, has that enabled you to counter problems faced in life? Has that given you an inner strength? The fact that you went to yeshiva?
I'm no longer hearing clear. Can you repeat, please?
Yeah.
Something happened to the. Please.
Right. So, as in your youth, you studied in yeshiva. Do you feel that studying yeshiva and getting the disciplines of learning in yeshiva gave you greater ability to withstand everything that life was throwing at you, gave you the better ability to see things more clearly? And what benefit do you feel it, and should more people be doing it?
I think the one thing in yeshiva, if you study, the first thing is you question things, and you keep on questioning, and then you try to come to some sort of answer. But even every answer that you come to, you question. So I think the one thing that it gives you it sort of adds to a sense of research, a sense of coming down to fundamentals. So I think the thought process of learning Gemara, I think, has certainly been immensely beneficial to me, and I still very much enjoy it. And I think it's fascinating. I think it's what you see is amazing, or what you learn is amazing. And I think it probably did mark my life. It also gives you a sense of ethics, of decency, etc. Because those are the fundamentals of trying to be a proper Jew.
Well, I've certainly gained from that, because certainly sitting next to you on a Shabbos morning, I've always learned immensely from you, but I have noticed that during the week in Marble Arch, you keep your distance. So I presume that one day a week is enough for you sitting next to me.
What I noticed is I used to come to the place far more often, and you choose not to sit next to me during the week. There was never a moment, I guess part of what I learned in yeshiva, if you're the first one there and you're a normal attendee, friends come to you as opposed to you having to get up, unless they're older or far more important than you. So perhaps I haven't given you the credit you're due. So next time I see you, I will treat you with more respect and come and sit next to you.
Well, Harry Handelsman, thank you very much for being a friend. Thank you very much for being a teacher, and thank you very much for being interviewed by WMA Talks. Good night.
Well, I thank you very much, and and like I wish, I think I'm looking forward to Marble Arch opening again, hopefully on the 4th of July. I think hopefully we'll reach a high level of attendance than as it closed, and I think the synagogue can and should play an important role in the British Jewish community.
Well, I think Marble Arch has certainly, for both of us, played a very important part in our lives, and possibly to its advantage today, but probably disadvantage in the past. We've been sort of ensuring social distancing in Marble Arch for many years, and maybe that will change in the future.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.